Hi, Bradley.
Hey John, hey, how you going?
I'm good, thank you. How are you ticking on down in London?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Just trying to make the most of it at the moment. It is really difficult, but just trying to do my best to stay in good shape and yeah, keep ticking on with some of the good preparation that I've done over the winter.
Yeah, I'd be good to hear a little bit more about that in a little while. It's a pretty unique situation you're training through, and then also people have been seeing your videos going online, so they feel like they're probably following you through that process a little bit as well.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure.
So, firstly, again, a big thanks from me for agreeing to do this. It's obviously not something that's hard to get you guys to come on and do. You love your sport and you love chatting to people that are doing it, but still appreciate you taking the time at the end of the day. We're going to kick off with a few silly questions, then we're going to put some of them to the crowd.
Oh dear.
First thing that comes to mind: um, cabin in the mountains or a mansion in the suburbs.
Um, I really love skiing, so probably cabin in the mountains for the moment.
Good call. Yeah. I think we don't think we've had a paddler yet that hasn't answered that. Um, cups in the cupboard, upside down or right side up?
Got to be upside down.
Yeah. Oh, you're pretty strong on that.
Yeah, oh, it's just a bit grotty, isn't it? If you leave it the right way up and you've got dust going in it or whatever,
I
it's
never
not
thought,
for me.
don't know how dusty your cupboards are. We had the answer from Tim Brabants, who's living in, he was the same, but living in South Africa to stop the spiders going in. So I might do the
Uh,
same approach there. Um, Lee Valley or Bourg Saint Maurice?
oof. Um, Probably Berg San Maurice, to be honest. It's so rare. I don't know if I'll ever be able to paddle there again. But when I raced the
Yeah.
Junior Europeans in 2013, that was just, it's just an amazing venue to race at. But also, I do love racing at home as well. The crowd's always fantastic.
Yeah. I'm glad I've managed to pick a hard one to choose between there, but
Yeah, definitely. That is a really difficult one, but
you're plumping
yeah,
for the French Alps.
yeah, the big white water in the French Alps is awesome.
Last one should be a bit easier for you. Canoe or kayak?
Kayak.
Okay.
Although I can respect what the canoe guys do, it's got to be speed over technique sometimes.
Well, let's put these same questions to our panelists. Well, no, to our attendees. So I'm launching a poll now. Trying to see, and if you guys can start answering the questions. I can't see a way of sharing the answers with you, so I'm just going to talk through it as we go. So can you see the results there, Bradley, as well?
I can. Should I fill it in whilst we go, or
No, no,
just
we've had your
leave it?
answers, so don't
Okay, fine.
want you spoiling the data. I see you seem to be in the minority on the cups, I'm afraid.
People just don't know what they're talking about, do they?
Just not hygienic in your book.
No.
Cabin in the mountains, though, is pretty much. I think we only had. We've got two people now that want to be in the suburbs, and that's it. And then Lee Valley, Bourg Saint Maurice. It's tight. We've got 12 for Lee Valley, 8 for Bourg. Maybe that's just because some of them haven't been to Bourg yet. We'll see.
I think probably more likely some people haven't been to Burke, but yeah, it's got to be up there.
And it's in a bit of a state at the moment. I'm right in thinking it got flooded over the winter, and
Yeah, there was a big landslide there last year, and it was just this kind of muddy sludge that was going down the course and seems to have moved a lot of the rocks. And I don't know what state of disrepair it's in just now, but hopefully they do get it back up and running at some point.
yeah, well, you'd kind of think the French probably would be keen on doing that. And canoe or kayak, it's kayak 11 to 5 canoe, but then we've got four doing both as well. I didn't give you that option, Bradley, because
Uh,
I know what you
I
do.
mean, there's a bit of a bias to me being a kayaker, you being a kayaker. I'd imagine there's a big kayak audience in there.
Yeah, it is quite likely. I did try Sprint C1, and I think I'm glad
How
I
did
just
that
stuck
go
to
for
that.
you?
It was tough. I was okay as long as I was in lane one and nice and close to the bank. I felt quite stable. But put me out in lane five, I kind of got scared, and then just all technique went out the window. It was just survival. No, it's pretty tough. So I'm just going to kick off with, you can see some questions have started coming in, but just the first few minutes, it'd be nice to have a chat. And I guess one of the things, we're going to have a lot of young Scottish paddlers on the call today, and essentially you've kind of come through the same rivers, same steps, same clubs, a lot of the same coaches and people that kind of helped you at the start of your career, as a lot of young paddlers will be today. Could you just give us a chat about, how you got into the sport? I guess first, how did you find it, or did it find you? And what were those first few years of paddling and progression like?
um, yeah, for me, I started the sport when I was around 10 years old, maybe 11 years old. And after school, I used to attend an after school club in Edinburgh. And in the summer months, they ran a learn to kayak course. It was five weeks. You got to go once a week. And the first year they ran it, I was too young to attend. I think you had to be in primary six, and I was in primary five or something. So I was really pretty gutted to not be able to attend this course. And then the next year, thankfully, they ran it again. And to be given that opportunity once again, I was like, yeah, I definitely want to do that. Like, took the permission slip home to my mum, she signed it off, and then I was away. Kind of at that time, it was with my friends from the after school club. And I just remember the first time I pitched up to the Musselburgh Lagoons just outside Edinburgh. And, I was given my paddle and my boat, and instantly kind of jumped into it. I heard a little bit of instruction from the instructor, but I was pretty keen to just give it a bash myself. And it was, even after the first lesson, I remember it was pretty obvious that I was, much more like naturally talented than a lot of my friends. I could already paddle the boat in a straight line. And when we had any kind of small races at the courses on the Musselburgh Lagoons, I was just always like, the fastest one in the straight line, even at such an early stage of paddling. So I think that gave me a lot of confidence. And working with, a really good instructor who I don't actually remember his name or anything.
Wow.
But yeah, I remember him being a really, really good guy and giving me good tips. And always, after the final week of the course, he said, you should go along to your local club, which for me was the Fourth Canoe Club on the Union Canal. And it just kind of took off from there, really. I paddled a few different boats. I did a little bit in a sprint boat once I could kind of paddle a normal boat correctly, or maybe it was a sea kayak. And then I had to go in a whitewater racer, a sprint boat. And then one day there was a member of the club called David Cuttle, who was at the canoe club, and he was in a slalom boat. He was really into slalom, and he said, look, come and have a little shot in one of these boats and see what you think. And I just remember he had a stopwatch. And from that moment of knowing that, kind of finding out a little bit more of what canoe slalom was, I was just hooked at the idea of it being competitive, time trial. You had to negotiate the gates cleanly but also quickly, and it was just really, really appealing. So from there, I might have had a go in some other boats for the next 2 weeks or something, but was pretty quick to think that canoe slalom was the discipline that I wanted to go with. And then from there, it was on to my first river, which was down at Fernie. I did a river trip, and I managed to negotiate one of the rapids called the Horseshoe Fall, which was, in any younger athlete's career, is quite a daunting little rapid to run. And I remember I got down it. I was really really quite scared at the top
Yeah.
of the rapids, and then Davy Cuttle was on the river trip with us that day, and he said, "Just follow me and it'll be fine." And sure enough, it was fine. And I negotiated it without capsizing, and then past that, it was on to my first race at Alva, Division 4 race. From there, again, it was just always spurring on that kind of competitive mentality where I won my first Division 4 race and moved straight into Division 3. And yeah, just kept going from there, really progressing up the ranks and just loving that whole experience of competition and the nerves that you get even at such a low level on the start line. You're just sat on the start thinking, oh, I really hope this goes well. Or
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking, definitely.
Yeah, the nerves are just kind of always the same, aren't they, from day from day one?
Yeah, it really doesn't matter what level of competition you're at. Even for me now, racing senior world championships, European championships, World Cups, kind of, 6 of these big events per year for the last 5 years. Even when I do a top level UK race now, it's still the same nerves. You want to go out there and produce your best performance on the day, and that's really what it's about. And it's
And
yeah, just trying to manage all of that expectation on race day and deliver the course as well as you can.
and you kind of described, the stopwatch coming out on the first session doing slalom. Was that something that you were kind of, and you mentioned doing some sprints on the Musselburgh lagoons as well. Were you waiting for that competitive outlet? Do you feel like you need that competitive side to a sport?
At the time, I was competing in ski slalom um, with just younger age group. Scotland, I was
Mhm.
top 3 for my age group within Scotland, doing lots of those races. And I don't know what it was, that it just seemed like I had more opportunities within canoeing to
Mhm.
get to that top level, even even though it seems harder to get to that top level, because in the UK we are particularly good at canoe slalom in comparison to
Mhm.
ski slalom. And we've got great rivers, we don't have very good snow, so I think making that decision eventually came quite naturally.
Yeah. So you kept on skiing alongside your paddling for a little while then?
Yeah, probably until I was around 15 or 16. I was
Oh, wow.
doing competitive ski slalom kind of. But as I got further on in my kayaking career, I was starting to miss ski training and ski racing to participate in more canoe training and more canoe racing. So yeah, that was just, again, I was coming to that point within my career where I knew that I had to make a decision if I wanted to be good at one of them.
Mhm.
The decision had to be made where I had to say, I'm going to stop this or I'm going to stop canoeing, which
So
just didn't
so
really seem like much of an option.
no, that's always a good sign when it's kind of a natural decision. So you're 15. Kind of where are you at? Where are you standing in the sport? Age 15, you're starting to specialize a little bit more. You mentioned going to junior Europeans, but what was that kind of from getting close to the junior team onwards? What was the path from there?
With I was really, I've always been really lucky throughout my career that I feel I've had really good coaches and just kind of been in the right place at the right time. But for me at the time, it was Johnny Brown and Davy Dixon, Neil Caffrey. Um, these guys played a massive role in my career. Um, we're kind of going on like 4 or 5 week summer training camps to Prague and Bratislava and Murano in Italy.
Okay.
Trying to think where else we went. Saint Pierre de Boeuf
Yeah.
was one of the first courses that I went to abroad. It was the first course that I went to abroad. Um, and L'Argentier as well. So yeah, from around when I was 15, I had been on a few international trips, but then when I was 15, I attended the Teen Cup in Tassen, and I was racing the under. I might have even done an under 14 race there, to be honest. But I started to race against guys from foreign countries in my age class, and just absolutely loved competing against the foreigners as well. Wanted to perform well for Britain even at such a young age. And some of the guys who I was competing against back then, the likes of Jakub Grigor, Andre Malek, they've been with me throughout my whole career, and we're still competing against each other now, really.
It's amazing, isn't it, that you would, year after year, and then before you know it, it's decade after decade, you're all going back to your respective countries, getting a little bit better, then coming back the next year, and if you're making a team, racing against each other again. So there's a few people like that you remember from pretty much under 14 international racing.
Yeah,
Still there
and
now.
they were like, even at that stage, I think I was probably a little bit more of a late progressor. Like, I didn't start to build muscle until maybe 16, 17, whereas those guys were already, massive. I think they must have had really early growth spurts. So I felt like I was up against it, and I really had to, work hard on my technique to be as competitive as those guys were, just because they were so much stronger than I was on the water.
Yeah. In terms of where did that technical background come from then? Because it's quite hard to do it better than someone else.
Yeah, I guess so after school sometimes I used to go and meet mum at her work. I used to walk across the meadows in Edinburgh to meet mum at work, and I used to just annoy her basically until she'd let me on her computer so that I could just sit and watch canoeing videos on YouTube of Campbell Walsh and Peter Kauser, Fabian Dorfler, those guys. I was just really just trying to learn as much as I could from. I didn't even know that I was probably learning at that stage, but I just loved watching these guys on YouTube, and then thinking, how can I try and do that when I go to train at Alva or Linlithgow?
Okay, that's interesting. So because I guess there's probably less content online then as well.
Yeah, definitely. Campbell Walsh had a really good website at the time where he was constantly uploading videos from the European Championships or World Championships. So that was probably the best tool that I had at that point. And then, like I say, I was really fortunate to have good coaches that, while Neil had raced internationally and made World Cup final, etc. So he was capable of racing at that top level, and he passed a lot of his technique and knowledge on to me. So again, I was trying to use as many resources as I could, really.
And the coaches that you'd working with, they'd worked with other athletes that you were aspiring to be like as well, I guess. So you were, assume, wanting to follow in their footsteps.
Yeah, definitely. Neil had raced with Campbell and done some training with Campbell, and spent a lot of weeks of the summer training in Augsburg, where at the time the German canoe slalom team were just so strong. So yeah, he had a lot of good experience from working with these guys.
So would it be fair to say, if you were to give a bit of advice to young paddlers now, it would be to study the sport, to watch it, to see what others are doing, and try and take that into your training?
Yeah, that's probably one of the, if I was myself giving advice to a younger athlete, it would definitely be try to watch as much as you can on YouTube or wherever you can find high level canoe slalom content. I don't know, Instagram I think also has a lot. I certainly post on there. Yuri Priskovich, Peter Kauser, these guys they're pretty much showing you how to do it without telling you maybe exactly what to do.
Yeah.
But that, it's a really, really valuable tool. And I do sometimes think about what I'm posting up there, because do you want your competitors to see what you've been working on in training?
Hmm.
So it's a
This is
difficult
it.
one, but
This
I
is
do, because I learned so much from it, I do feel obliged to almost give a little bit back into the system and keep that kind of pool of knowledge, building.
I mean, when you put some of your videos of you, absolutely nailing a run, even as a non-slalomist, and watching that, thinking, "Crikey, that looks impressive." So there must be something going on. As with any like sports star, when they're right on their game, you can kind of see the fluency in the movement. If you're able to then break that down because you're a slalomist, or maybe you take that to your coach and chat about it within those
Yeah.
5-10 second clips you put on, there must be a wealth to learn. I'm kind of interested from the point of view of the pro athlete as well, and kind of living in a social media age. What's the balance of that with you obviously used to watch them a lot because you had so far to grow. The people you're watching are so much better than you were at that time. You're now one of the people at the top of the sport. Do you find you actually have to be careful about watching other people put their runs, their stuff down, sort of maybe emotionally, and
Yeah,
how that is to deal with?
yeah, definitely. Now around the big races, I tend to switch off from social media completely.
Okay.
Around 5 weeks out from a big race, I feel at that stage you've probably learned what all that you could have learned without, being able to go and train much more, because at that stage you're starting to reduce your training, freshen up for the big races of the season. So at that point, I kind of believe it does become more of a hindrance than a help. Um, and at that stage as well, when you're starting to get more into that racing mentality, I think, it's so important for me to be able to focus on myself.
Hmm.
Um, that is at leading up to the SAO World Championships. So Joe was leading the selection series. I was in second, and I knew that I had to finish in the top five and be ahead of Joe. And in that stage, I knew Joe was going to be in the top five as well, because he is, really, really strong on the water, and he's a great performer as well. So um, at that stage, I thought watching anyone else was just going to be more of a hindrance. I really had to focus on my game, what I was doing, and not kind of let anything distract me, which is really difficult, because when you get closer to a race as well, all of the emotions of, just everything start to build up. Little things that would
Yeah.
probably never annoy you on a normal training day, because you do have more time to process all of your training and everything, you start to let all these little things potentially get to you if you don't switch off and just think about whether you've done your best in training or not.
So you switched off the social media and just tried to keep it simple then?
Yeah, just very much when I'm getting close to a race, I'll just like to lean on my, close circle of friends and family for
Mhm.
that support. Um, there probably there has never been a time where I've I've not needed them when
Mhm.
it's come down to racing. So yeah, trying to figure out who your kind of close circle is as a young athlete can be really difficult. And as you progress, I guess you'll find out from spending more years in the sport who you can trust with,
Mhm.
how you're feeling, etc., and how to avoid maybe getting involved in some sort of negativity.
Of course, just an interest, kind of. Are any of those people in that circle other paddlers, or any of them kind of any foreign competitors that are actually people you would still keep communicating with?
No, not particularly. It's more for me old coaches who might not even be involved in the sport anymore,
Okay.
and my friends from, Edinburgh and London, just because they live in such a different world where,
Yeah.
they're working 9 to 5 and then doing whatever they want on the weekends.
Mhm.
They've really helped me kind of bring everything back to reality, and that,
Okay. So this,
even though it feels like a big deal, life does go on.
yeah. So for you, is people giving you a bit of perspective because they're outside of
Yeah.
the bubble.
And yeah, making me realize how much of a kind of privileged position that I find myself in, because I am fortunate that I don't have to work for a living. I can pretty much do what I want throughout the day, as long as that's not impacting on my recovery
Mhm.
or the next training session. um but also on that, I do think, for my own mental health, it's for yeah, my training to go well, I do need to have that balance of socializing as well, where I can go out and have a few drinks with my friends and just generally relax and catch up, basically.
Yes, I guess it's there's like an important message that I think about having a long career is kind of keeping people alongside you. You're talking about that actually sort of decades later, you're reaching back to either coaches or people that you started with, so you've maintained those friendships and your support network sometimes coming from people completely outside of the sport. If you took
Yeah,
the kind of Hollywood approach that people might, the movies might make you think sports as like it's everything on one target at the cost of all else, relationships, everything. I've
yeah.
not typically found that's the case for many people.
Or many people who make it to a top level. I think if you are putting that much onto it, you're going to be putting yourself under a lot of pressure, and
Mhm.
you could find yourself searching for results. Like, I did that. I've fallen foul of that, and in 2017 and 18, really, just started to put so much pressure on myself to perform at the World Championships, because it was the biggest race of the season. Everyone's on top of their game, and you just really want to put out a good performance there. And when it came down to it, in the earlier rounds, like in qualification, I was paddling fine, because I knew that getting within that top 40 wasn't a really it wasn't a really difficult task for me. But as soon as that pressure came on and I was looking to make the top 10 for the final, my body just kind of seized up, and I
Mhm.
wasn't moving fluidly in the boat. And that was just down to pretty much not having, or I think it was down to not having enough other things outside of the sport going on in my life for me to focus on and gain enjoyment from.
So all that pressure then was heaped on that one race, that one run, and that's too
Yeah,
much going on.
that's a lot going on. It really is a lot to try and deal with. And then, you might, in that situation, you're thinking, oh, am I going to be able to keep my funding for next year or whatever? And, there just becomes so many factors, instead of just trying to think back to why did I start doing the sport? And that was because I really enjoyed it. And that's what I want to be doing when I'm doing, when I'm participating or training for canoe slalom.
So what was your first, you made junior international team, what was your first race actually representing GB and getting that vest, as it were?
First proper GB junior team was the World Championships 2012 Junior Worlds, which were in Wisconsin, Wausau, in the
Okay.
USA. So that was a big trip. I don't think I'd ever been to the USA before, so just going there was like really exciting. And at that time, I knew that I was in a good position to go to not just go to the race and participate, but also, top 10, if not pull myself up into the medals if I had a really good day. So I was probably quite excited going there, and the event didn't really go as I wanted it to. Was probably training because again it was an earlier period within my career, and I think I trained too much leading into the event. So when I got there, I was absolutely knackered, and then
Was that training at
uh,
home before the event, or on the water at the event? You were just too
no, on
much.
yeah, once I'd actually got to the event,
Okay.
just trying to learn the course. You normally get a 1 hour time slot each day, and I was pretty much optimizing that to the fullest that it could possibly be.
Yeah.
Like, 6 runs, 7 runs leading into an event, which was just probably a little bit too much. And but now further on in my career, I'm starting to understand more and more year on year what my body requires, like leading into event. And even if you don't feel good in training, that doesn't mean you're going to perform badly in the race.
It's interesting. You've kind of quickly jumped from one mistake to another as examples that inform what you do today, about putting too much pressure
Yeah.
on one race, or just doing too much, kind of going into the week of a race because you think doing more is gonna help. And it, I think that really, for me, tells the story of what sport is about a lot of the time. It is about kind of failing, making small mistakes, but actually learning from them.
And in canoe slalom, especially, I think, the guys with experience are generally the ones who are able to come out on top most of the time. You can see Peter Kauser, he's got a lot of experience. Yuri Priskovich as well. He's been paddling maybe since he's been able to walk, I'd imagine. His dad was a paddler, and even though he's maybe, what is he, about 3 years older than me, he does have a large amount of experience that I don't have. But I feel moving towards the games, I am feeling really confident in my processes that I kind of work on every day, whether that's, pitching up to, well, getting up in the morning, having, a bit of a routine breakfast, and then going over to training, my bankside, stretching warm up routine, getting on the water, having that consistent warm up. So then when you're racing or training, it's very transferable. And these are all just kind of tricks that you learn when you, yeah, when you do spend more time in the sport, as opposed really I don't think I've really ever seen any examples of athletes where it just kind of happens for them overnight in canoe slalom.
Hmm.
I think it has been generally a lot of graft from the athlete that's got them to the position that they're in.
Yes, undoubtedly. And the Olympics, they can almost be this thing that almost shows a bit of a lie, because people watch the Olympics. Some people only watch sport once every 4 years, and they'll watch everything at the Olympics, and they'll see some people win some medals, and some of them dominate. They might make it look really easy. I always think about Jess Ennis. They kind of said she was
Yeah,
going to win, and she did in London, and it just seemed like such an easy thing. And so few people understand what the day to day is like. It's quite a boring day to day. It's a repetitive day to day. It's about detail.
yeah.
Um, but was there anything that kind of helped you understand that some of those smaller things were going to make a difference?
Um, One coach that I had, Mark Dimenjo, he's a Spanish lad. He came over and worked with British Canoeing for a few years, but he was so driven by a process focus and training. And at that period in my career, I was, I don't know, 20, maybe 21, and I felt massively driven by ego and just wanting to beat people. Um, and then I was struggling to understand, if I had a bad training day, why it went wrong.
Mhm.
Whereas now I can see my loading, the loading periodization of my training. And if I have uh, an average training day after having a massive gym session, I'm starting to put, two and two together as to why something might not be going exactly how I'd want it to if I was racing the world championships or something. But at that stage of my career, I was very much, I feel like I should be amazing every day, whereas it's just not a reality, really.
And who did you, when you weren't amazing every day, did you find yourself taking it out on yourself, the coaches around you, or a bit of both?
Definitely, the coaches still get a lot of heat even now. Richard Hounslow, who I'm working with at the minute, he does well to, you know, take a lot of heat to not
He's
really
a big boy.
react.
Okay.
Yeah, but
All
he's
right.
quite a reactive person. Like,
Yeah.
he can be quite fiery, but he does well to just ignore it now, even though we're still in quite a new relationship where we've only been working together for, I think this will be the third year, maybe start of the third year. And yeah, even within such a short period of time, I think we have built a strong working relationship where we know how to get the best out of each other,
Hmm.
which is really, really important, I think.
It's it's interesting hearing that kind of about Rich, because I think so much about you know how you might be responding to those situations is from my reflections is down to fatigue. I just remember how tired I was a lot of the time, and looking back now, I was probably a lot less rational about small situations than it's quite easy to be now. I guess a good coach, they don't have all the physical fatigue that the athlete has, so they're probably able to see when you're just,
Knackered,
yeah,
absolutely knackered. Yeah,
it might come out in a bit of grumpiness. But um, so you went to Rio 2016 on the Ambitions program. Um,
I did.
I remember bumping into you out there whilst we were in our kind of zoning in the last minute preparations. How was that
Yeah, how was
experience?
that? How was that for you actually? Like, because that's kind of what I expect to have. Like, when I eventually, when the Tokyo Games do take place, I'm gonna have the Ambitions program guys coming out wanting to have a little bit of chat, and
Yeah,
how do you deal with that kind of?
it was really bizarre because you're in a bit of Groundhog Day at that point. You're training at the same time every day. You're not training that much, so your fatigue's kind of starting to drop away, and you're just on your hotel bed, kind of chilling out in between sessions. You're in this
Probably got
routine.
more of the headspace to deal with something like that just
Oh,
off an afternoon. You kind of know that it's going to happen.
it was almost more that it was just a nice thing. It was awesome seeing someone else because I think both of my reflections on the games is that it's a little bit lonely going into it because you're pulling away from, well, you're socially isolating, but kind of even before it was fashionable.
Yeah,
What you're doing is you're keeping risks low. You're just in a small group. You're not going out. So London 2012 in particular, I wouldn't be going and watching any of the racing, even though I could hear it from my hotel room. It's all passing by, so it's actually quite a
yeah,
boring
yeah,
time. So having you guys turn up was kind of like something interesting, a highlight for the day. So and these people turning up are the kind of stars of the future. So I actually remember it. Probably many of the days in that training camp before the games, I won't remember because they're all the
yeah,
same. So no, seeing you guys there was really cool, and it was just a little break of the monotony of the day. But it was also tied up with this underlying kind of nerves that you are still on quite that selfish kind of athlete track where you're just looking after
yeah,
yourself because your job at that point is just look after yourself. How did you find the whole
yeah.
trip though?
Yeah, I absolutely loved the Ambition program. Probably helped that I went with, the other athletes that were selected are guys that I really got on with at the time. The member of staff who came with us on the trip was also, a good lad as well. So yeah, it was just generally a really, really enjoyable experience. But I
We should
do
probably
remember.
explain. Can you explain what that program is actually for those that don't know?
The Ambition program is a program run by the BOA where, four young athletes um, are selected based on probably more their profile to compete at a future games. and they're taken out to wherever the Olympics is held that year. And you get shown around the Olympic Village. You get to go and watch your sport, which for me was an awesome experience. Seeing Clarkey win gold, Dave and Rich win silver. Fiona was 5th or 6th, I think, but also in the final. Dave was in the final in C1. So yeah, it was just a really awesome experience. And you just get a feel for what the games is probably going to be like. You've got that atmosphere where you can hear how loud the crowd are. And also you get taken to other little bits that you might not see if you're competing at the Olympics. So for us, that was going up to Belo Horizonte, was it? Is that where your holding
Belo
camp
Horizonte.
was?
Yes.
And yeah, seeing the likes of Johnny and Liam. I just remember that day you boys were out in K2, I think, doing some 100-meter, 50-meter efforts, and I just thought, bloody hell, they're going quite quickly there. Still thought I could beat you there. So.
I mean, you're still unbeaten in a sprint boat against us, so.
But yeah, that was all a really, really good experience. And if anyone who's watching gets the opportunity to take that up in the future, then I would massively recommend it, because it was probably one of the best experiences I've had to date with canoeing.
I think as well, it's for the people that see kind of Team GB's results being so good the last few years, it's things like the Ambitions program, where they're realizing that it's very hard for someone on their first Olympics to necessarily perform first time round. So they're wanting to send people to Olympics before their first one. So I did the same. I was in the Beijing cohort with the Ambitions.
Oh, cool.
And it certainly kind of next time round just took some of the shock of how big the Olympics is away, because it's nothing like a canoe slalom competition normally is.
I'm expecting the build up to be very big. Generally, I think it will be big, but once I actually get out to Tokyo for the final time for the Olympic Games, I'm pretty certain I'll feel like it's just another race, and I'm just at that stage. I'm just there to do my job, as I would be at any race. You go, you set your plan with your coach, and pretty much the only thing you can do at that point is stick to your plan as well as you possibly can. And if there's any imperfections on your run, you just adapt to, just adapt naturally, because you've done all this training to be able to adapt naturally. So you've just got to go with it in the moment and do your best to get yourself as quickly as possible back on track.
Yeah. So you're trying to boil it down to just being a race like any other race, where you're trying to deliver your perfect run.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
let's just go through. We've got a few questions popping in, and if you guys have heard anything that's piqued your interest that we've chatted about in the last few minutes, do throw some more questions in there. So they're kind of most of them aren't specific to things we've been speaking about. Here's one just to change the pace a little bit from Vito. Do you have any sporting idols that have given you inspiration, both inside and out from canoeing?
On a canoeing front, definitely, probably the biggest inspiration of mine was Peter Kauser. Just his kind of flowy style makes everything look really effortless. And even though he's a light guy, I don't think he's particularly strong in the gym either, but he makes the boat go forward and sits it up on top of the water. And that's just a really cool thing to watch, really. If you're into the sport and you understand the intricacies of what's going on, then you can really appreciate watching something like that. And then out of the sport, probably back in 2008, it would have been after everyone came back from the Olympics, I got to go on the open top bus in Edinburgh, which was the Olympic celebration for the medalists. And on
Oh,
that bus, I met Sir Chris Hoy and Dame Catherine Granger as well. And, you know, just watching their success over the last few Olympics has really inspired me to want to do the same.
nice. So it's those just actually that day of seeing those big Scottish names come back to Edinburgh was pretty
Yeah,
inspirational.
definitely. Yeah.
Uh, what sport would you do if you couldn't or didn't do kayaking?
I think I'd
Two.
still be doing ski slalom.
Okay.
Um, or rugby as well. At school, I really enjoyed playing rugby. But yeah, I think definitely ski slalom. Again, it's exciting. Um, Probably a little bit more of an extreme sport, which I think I was pulled more towards extreme sports. You know, I did a little bit of mountain biking as well when I was younger. So yeah, it definitely had to be something extreme. But I think ski slalom would be the one.
And your favorite place to paddle?
My favorite place to paddle. I really like Tassen in Slovenia, just outside Ljubljana. Um, you know, the big drop there. I don't. Maybe it's a little bit similar to Bratislava, where you kind of, you know, you lose your stomach and you kind of
Yeah.
just go zero gravity for a split second before, like, you know, going down the rest of the drop, and it's massive, and
And
yeah, that's a
Tarsen,
really
you're
enjoyable
sprinting
place.
you're sprinting into that drop off the start line in Tarsen as well.
Yeah, they have actually reduced the start now, so you don't do that big sprint anymore. But when I won
Okay.
my World Cup medal back in 2016, I yeah, that sprint was it's really cool to see the drop kind of coming at you, and then you push under the little bridge, and the kind of whole course just explodes in front of your eyes, really.
Yeah.
And the crowd is like really loud there as well.
Man, it's those those are experiences you'll look back on and remember those little snapshots of being in the middle of it all. Um,
Yeah, definitely.
got a question from Michael Denver. How do you manage living with teammates leading up to big races, knowing that you'll be racing against them?
Within the British team, we're pretty fortunate to have a policy in place where you'd never be rooming with your direct competition. So for myself and Joe, we have shared previously back in kind of 2016, 17, but they brought in this new policy where you'd only be sharing with another athlete in a different class. So for me, I tend to share a room with David Florence, which we get on really well, both from Edinburgh. Um, and yeah, we kind of, he passes a lot of his, not, I'm generally probably bugging him a lot, asking, you know, about his experiences of the Olympics and,
Yeah, yeah, asking the
you
Godfather.
know, big races that he's competed at. So yeah, I definitely try to gain as much knowledge as I can from sharing with Dave.
Yeah, that must have been a big moment, like having grown up watching him to suddenly be sharing a room at an international.
Yeah, definitely. I think I was invited to join his training group with Mark Delaney before we shared a room for the first time, but I just remember being kind of invited by the program and Dave and Mark to go and train with them, and that just being such an amazing experience, and feeling that someone you've looked up to throughout your whole career now thinks that you're on that level to go and train with them, where they think they might learn something from you.
Yeah, yeah. When you put it like that, it seems like such a big turnaround, doesn't it? But
Yeah.
it certainly does and can happen. Um, so with the kind of lockdown we're in at the moment, been watching your videos. You got a pretty well stocked home gym slash your whole flat looks like it must be a gym.
Yeah, it's there's a lot going on in here at the minute. Yeah.
We've got a question from Anne Grant saying, have you been using any training by being competitive using Zoom or Google or Teams or something like that to push yourself against others, given the current limitations?
Mm,
Have you been competing
Just
online?
I'd just like to say hi to Anne. Actually, she's one of my favourite people. Kind of a second a second mum. But I've just been doing a few sessions on Google Hangouts with my coach, where he's kind of still talking to me whether I'm doing some weights or on the ergo. And I'm just kind of using that as a little bit of motivation, but there's no kind of competitive stuff as such.
Mhm. I get. Uh, I guess you push yourself so hard in everything you do. Anyway, that's maybe not an issue for you.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I was given a kind of set amount of weights by our S&C coach for the lockdown period. And he said to me, well, if you can lift this much by the end of lockdown, then I know that we're going to be in a good place. And after about 2 weeks, I was asking for more weights. I still haven't got them yet, but yeah, definitely trying my best to get my hands on some more weights, which are pretty hard to come by at the moment.
Yeah, I think they're a bit like gold dust at the moment, but
Yeah.
that's kind of the dream, to be too strong for the gym, not enough weight. So that's
Yeah, I did my kayak paddle ergo had some problems the other day where I was doing a session on it, like a few sprints at the end of a threshold session, and I broke the carbon paddle shaft on it, so that was kind of
yeah.
less than ideal.
Was that how did that break? Just
Yeah, it
sheer
just kind of
force?
exploded in my hand when I was doing a stroke. I was lucky that the part that broke on the shaft was well wrapped with tape, or you get like, it's happened to me once before, and you get loads of like carbon splinters in your hands, and it's all a bit horrible, really.
Okay. So you're protected from injury by the masses of tape on the
On the paddle shaft, yeah.
And what kind of sessions are you doing on the ergo mostly at the moment? Is it a mixture or mostly one kind of thing?
Um, I find when I paddle for too long on the ergo, it kind of hurts my lower back. So I've been doing more kind of 30 on, 30 off at a threshold pace so that I can stand up and walk around a little bit, just give my back a little bit of a break in between efforts.
Mhm.
That's been the main one I've been sticking to, kind of 30 on times 8. And then I would do kind of 5 sets of that, 8 to 10, 5 sets of that, and maybe a few higher intensity sprints at the end of a session.
Oh, we've got a useful kind of question or suggestion coming in here uh, anonymously. Do you think you could maybe bench your sofa for weight if you run out?
I don't think it'd be heavy enough. I think the weights are probably heavier than my sofa is.
I'd be impressed if you maybe if you have a few friends around, you might have 135 kilos of sofa, but
Yeah, definitely. I'd need a few people sat on there, I think.
so we're coming up towards the hour now. We've got a couple of good questions I'm going to kind of save for the end. I guess you're just coming back to where we are now. You've talked a little bit about uh, Tokyo already, and kind of you've obviously thought about what your mindset's going to be for that race already. It's now shifted back by a year. Two questions from me, I guess. One, from the selections, where you qualified that place and you knew you were going to Tokyo, through to Tokyo, what was it that you thought you could improve? What was the main focus? And then now we've got another year. What's going to be the thing that you're going to be working on the hardest, where you think there's room to grow?
I think throughout, probably for the rest of my career now, definitely trying to mindset is just the ultimate. I think you can be as strong as you like, as fit as you like, and those are major factors to producing a good performance. But I think mindset kind of always can potentially overcome someone's strength or fitness. Um, But for me, after getting selected at the World Championships in September, I kind of knew that I wasn't as strong as the other British boys on the kind of interval training, the really short length, high speed intervals. I was just getting really lactic-y in my arms, a really big build-up of lactic acid, and um, that was one of our big goals for the winter, was to be able to cope better with that production of lactic acid. And I feel like this winter we did a really good job of that. I think I pretty much matched the other boys on our 20-meter record, but um, I've, I've taken the 40-meter and the 80-meter records now for, British canoe slalom. So that was a really big goal of ours. Even though it's flat water speed, it's still quite transferable onto the slalom course. And then that was it really. That was our main target, and I feel like we achieved that. But now going forward, we've been kind of through a series of unfortunate events. We've gained this extra 12 months, which I've been trying to turn into more of a positive thing. I am still pretty young within my career, and I thought that the 12 months would actually benefit me more than having less time to the games. So again, we've got another run at winter training. We're probably going to, well, we are already looking at what we did this winter and deciding what we want to do for the following winter. This winter we were in Dubai for 2 weeks in January and 2 weeks in February, but I think now we will benefit more from going to Australia for just a 4-week continuous camp. And so that's one of my plans that's in the running. But again, I think we'll be looking to optimize that time in the warm weather with a lot of flat water speed work, and just working on that mindset of trying to understand what it's going to be like to compete at an Olympic Games without having ever done that, which is quite a difficult task.
Yeah, it is a tricky task, but I think I think you're benefiting by the sounds of it. I mean, you've got a coach that's had that experience for one, and actually a lot of people within the GB setup, within Team GB. So it sounds to me, just from what you're talking about, like you've digested a lot of that. So you're going to be there and ready to do it. We've got a question from Sam Bicknell, who is a young junior from Way Kayak Club, so flat water kayaker. He's asking, what's your fastest time down the course? But obviously that's not quite so relevant in slalom, although I was wondering if you knew what your fastest instantaneous speed had ever been in a kayak going down the course.
I have looked at, sometimes I set my watch up for when I'm doing loop sessions on Strava, but generally breaking kind of 25 kilometers an hour, like that would be the top speed that comes out on Strava, maybe even 30. But it's not often you get to that top speed. You might only be sitting there for a second or half a second until you're decelerating your boat to do an upstream or a really technical move.
And another way of looking at it would be, I'm curious as to what is the best run you've ever done?
I think the best run I've ever done was actually in winter training this year. It's not often I perform like really, really well in winter training, because you're struggling with fatigue, and just generally dealing with a really heavy training load. But we freshened it up a little bit this winter for a set of delivery fools, and I just remember starting my run with a really clear plan of what I wanted to do. Got to the bottom and knew that I'd pretty much sprinted the whole way and was very, very close to all of the gates without hitting them, and then I went into the office between runs. That was my first run. I had a second run to do eventually, but I went into the office and looked at the video, and I thought that was, probably the best run you've ever done, and worthy of, medaling at a big international competition, which is really, really, it's a really good sign for me, basically, to be producing that in winter training. In racing, I think one of the best runs I've ever done was probably, again, last year at the World Cup in Prague, where it was a semi-final, and it went really, really well. I just remember technically focusing on the key areas that I'd been working on in training, and again, didn't feel out of breath at the bottom of the course. I felt fit. I felt like I could have done the same again, which is often the case if you have a really good run. You feel like the whole thing was effortless, and you could keep pushing on for maybe another 20 seconds or something. But that run was really good, and I tried to watch that a lot, even though I did have a 50-second penalty. I negotiated one of the gates just a little bit too close to the margin, did pick up a penalty, but I still regarded it as a good performance, which might sound a little bit backwards to some people because the result wasn't good, but I knew that I'd done my best, and the performance was actually very good. And I think I thought about that a lot in the build up to the coming race, which was the World Championships. And I knew that I wanted to have that same mindset again, where I was just focusing on delivering the technical aspects of my paddling well and sticking to the plan.
That sounds like a great canoe slalom lesson where you could have just beaten yourself up about the 50 and not giving yourself any of the kudos, which gives you the confidence of the 95% of the run that was great. So it's kind of recognizing what
and it was like, again, it was just a really promising sign that I was in a good place. I think it was the third fastest run of the day, which made me, I was like, okay, I had a 50, but to be putting in a top 3 run on Prague, where the times are very, very tight, I was still extremely pleased with myself, even though I was frustrated at the 50 when I crossed the finish line. I thought I was unlucky to be awarded it, but equally I knew that I was in a good place moving on to a more important competition. And at that stage as well, I'd switched off from social media, and I knew that I couldn't be dwelling on any negatives. It was very much business as usual. I'm in a good place. Let's keep this momentum going to the World Championships.
So the key message was that the form was good. The result wasn't what you wanted, but the key message of my form's right there. We've got someone asking what is your 20-meter PB?
My 20-meter is a 5.3 seconds.
Okay. That sounds,
which I think the quickest is a 5.2, equal from Joe Clark and Chris Bowers.
Yeah. Okay, that's pretty solid.
So quite quick.
Yeah. It's in your sights to get close to the 5 seconds flat then for Tokyo.
Yeah, definitely. That's one to try and tick off. Take the 20-meter. I think that's the most important one. So that'll definitely be on the radar for the back end of this summer if we eventually come out of lockdown and winter training once again.
Well, look, just having seen how you're training and applying yourself, I think you're going to be on great form when that happens, and I think you should be looking forward to an exciting year. Given us just over an hour of your time, so I think we'll call it an evening there. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat to everyone. Bradley's he's on social media. If there's anything that's not been answered here, I'm sure you can find him and send further questions his way. Anything else you want to say before we go to everyone on the line here? Perhaps a parting piece of advice or anything at all?
I think I've probably given away enough wisdom this evening, but I would highly recommend watching as many of the big races on YouTube as you can, and you know, always try to kind of rate your performance as to whether it was close to the plan that you initially set at the start of the day. Instead of rating it off the result, start to rate it off, was, you know, did I you know, negotiate my plan as I wanted it to? And if yes, then that's amazing. If not, then, you know, that's something that you probably got to work on. But yeah, anyone who hasn't had their questions answered, I think off the back of this, I'll open up a Q&A on Friday or something like that. Friday afternoon, I might run a little Q&A on my Instagram, so feel free to fire across a question then.
Awesome. Appreciate that. So thanks for your time. Thanks for everyone for coming in and listening in tonight. We really appreciate it. It's really good to see some familiar names out there from the slalom community. And hopefully we'll see you all along a riverbank sometime soon. So good evening, everyone. We'll end the call there, and you all take care. Stay home and stay safe. See you, Bradley.
Thanks for joining, guys. Bye. Cheers, John. Bye.